Welcome to the Divine Paradigm Symposium, revealing universal pathways to joyful living. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gregory Hogue.
And I'm Gail Hogue.
And together, we have been researching and developing sacred geometry technologies for over 36 years to support the evolving consciousness of humanity and all life on the planet. We felt the inner call to bring together a collaboration of poignant dialogues with other visionary leaders whose work we love and have followed for many years. We will explore their insights and knowledge in these conversations to bring inspiration and clarity for navigating this amazing time. As we emerge from the pattern interrupt of COVID and challenges of the past year, deep-seated inner knowing will bring us forward into something new and perhaps unpredictable. Our intent is to support you on your path forward into a life of fulfillment. We have some very penetrating interviews with this series. Each one will offer you something of extraordinary value. So stay tuned each day for the next 3 weeks to absorb all you can from each of these amazing people. Every program will be available for 48 hours, and you can watch all the replays on Sunday. So let's get started. Dr. Margaret Paul is the co-author of several best-selling books, including Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You?, Inner Bonding, Healing Your Aloneness, the Healing Your Aloneness Workbook, Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by My Kids?, and Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by God? And her recent books, Diet for Divine Connection, Beyond Junk Foods and Junk Thoughts, to At-Will Spiritual Connection, and the Inner Bonding Workbook, 6 Steps to Healing Yourself and Connecting with Your Divine Guidance. Dr. Paul's books have been distributed worldwide and translated into 11 languages. Margaret holds a PhD in psychology and is a relationship expert, noted public speaker, workshop leader, educator, chaplain, consultant, and artist. She has appeared on many radio and TV shows, including The Oprah Show. She has successfully worked with thousands of individuals, couples, and business relationships, and taught classes and seminars since 1967. Margaret is able to access spiritual guidance during her sessions, and she is a passionate person about helping people rapidly heal the root cause of their pain and learn the path to joy and loving relationships through the inner bonding process in her courses, books, and programs. In her spare time, Margaret loves to paint, make pottery, read, cook delicious, healthy food, and spend time in nature. It is such a joy to have you with us today. And I think one of the things that really appeals to me and excites me the most is your connection to divine guidance. And what we're all going through right now with this major pattern interrupt and changing our lives, what did you experience and how did you context it this last year with COVID, and what happened to you?
Well, it's very interesting because first of all, I think that Mother Earth is very angry at us. And I don't think all of this is going to clear up until we start to take care of our environment, our health, our bodies, and until we really learn to have that spiritual connection. I think that over the last 100 years or so, when food changed so much, the factory farms took over and depleted our soil, which is so much a part of climate change and creating so much illness. I think that it also cut people off because from their spiritual guidance, because connectedness is natural. Spiritual connection is natural, but it's about frequency. And when we're putting junk in our bodies, we lower our frequency and cut that off. And in the inner bonding process, we also talk about the fact that it's about our intention, and that when our intention is to control and protect and avoid responsibility for ourselves, we lower our frequency and make it very difficult to connect. But when we're open to learning, we raise our frequency. So when we're open to learning about love, about loving ourselves, sharing our love with others, and we're taking good care of ourselves, we're able to access that. And for me, this has been so vital during this pandemic, because I get messages all day long, because I stay tuned in, about the fact that this is a reset. This is a huge reset, that either we're going to listen to what's going on, we're going to listen to the fact that Mother Earth is sick and we're sick as a result, and we're going to do something about it, about our personal health and the health of the planet, or we're not going to survive. And so as hard as the pandemic is for me, I've expected this, and I welcome the change, because everything has to change. How we deal with everything has to change. We are so far off course. And so I'm hoping that people are waking up. I think more and more people are waking up as a result of the pandemic. They're changing jobs, they're changing their priorities. For me, I feel really fortunate, because I've been able to put all of my work online. I got to stop traveling, and I don't think I'm going to go back to it, because I don't like it all that much. I'm going to stop teaching at retreat centers and just do it all online. And since I live in a ranch, I've got plenty of nature. I've been fine, but I've also worked really hard to help other people to learn to tap in to their feelings and take responsibility for them and their higher guidance, so that they can start to learn what it means to create love and joy in their lives, regardless of what's happening externally. And so it's been very exciting for me to be able to help so many people to weather this very, very difficult time.
Well, let's step into that a little bit more with your work as a psychologist and all of the books you've written, the inner bonding program. How specifically is your work impacting people during this transformative time where, I know you're dealing with issues like depression and anxiety, people feeling disconnected, alone, all of those kinds of things. And when people are, pulled away from their normal schedules, they don't have their work life and perhaps money the way they used to have. It's pretty stressful. So tell us a little bit about the impacts that you've seen and what you've been able to do to support people during this time.
Well, what I do is I teach them inner bonding, and inner bonding is such a powerful process. It does take practice, but when people practice it, they learn to take responsibility for their anxiety, their depression, their stress, their health, their well-being. They learn how to connect to their guidance so that they can manifest the life that they want. And so if you'd like, I'll go through the steps of inner bonding so that you understand what I'm doing with people. So step one, most of us, when we were growing up, we had pain. And when we're little, we don't know how to manage pain. So we start to disconnect from our body, which is where our feelings are. And we kind of dissociate and cut off from our body. We go up into our head, because when we're up in our mind, we don't feel our feelings. But our feelings have a tremendous amount of information for us. For example, our feelings of anxiety and depression and guilt and shame and anger and aloneness and emptiness all let us know that we are abandoning ourselves. That's the information of those feelings. And then the what we call the existential feelings of life, the loneliness, the grief, the helplessness over external things, the heartbreak. We also need to learn to manage these. These are the feelings we could not manage when we were growing up. And now we need to learn to manage them with compassion for ourselves. And we teach people how to do this so they don't have to avoid them. Step one of inner bonding is taking probably the biggest journey most people ever take, which is from their head to their heart and soul, and learning to be present in their body, what I call having your inner baby monitor on. Because when people have a baby and they want to be good parents, they don't just put the baby in a crib and go out to lunch. They've got a baby monitor on. And when the baby cries, they listen, they pick up the baby, they try and find out what's going on. How, what does the baby need? Well, that's what our feelings are like. These feelings are saying, pay attention to me. I need something that you're not giving to me, or you're treating me in some way that's hurtful to me. Because most of us have actually learned to abandon ourselves in 4 major ways. One is we stay up in our head instead of being present in our body. We judge ourselves, which is very painful. We turn to various addictions to numb out our feelings, or we make other people responsible. It's like giving the baby away to somebody else. We make others responsible for our feelings. So step one is so important, and it takes practice, but getting in your body is essential. When I first started practice inner bonding 37 years ago, I was totally in my head and tuned into other people's feelings because I was a caretaker. I was responsible for everybody else, but I had no idea how to take care of myself. So I didn't know what my feelings were. So it took practice to let go of caretaking, which is a form of control, to take responsibility of others' feelings and learn to get present in my body. Now I live in my body. I know the moment I feel anything other than peace and fullness inside, and I attend right away. But so this is a practice to get in your body and be willing to feel your feelings, including your painful feelings, because all these forms of self-abandonment are to avoid your painful feelings. So in order to shift that, we got to be willing to feel those feelings. So that's step one. Step two is breathing into the heart and consciously opening to learning. There's only 2 intentions in inner bonding, and one is the intention to have control and over others, how people feel about us, over outcomes and events, which we can't do, and over our feelings, to avoid our feelings, to protect against pain. So if our intention is to control and avoid and protect, we're going to be in a very low frequency. There's no way to tune in to what's loving and what's true. The other intention is the intention to learn about loving ourselves and sharing our love with others. So in step 2, we consciously open to learning, primarily about loving ourselves, because we can't really love others unless we're loving ourselves. And so step 2, we breathe in, we open to learning, and we visualize whatever works for you regarding a higher source of love. Many people that I work with have no spiritual ideas or connection at all. They might believe in God, but they don't connect. So I often ask people to imagine an older, wiser part of themselves, their own higher self. And so they imagine that and they just say, I invite your love and compassion into my heart. So step 2 is about creating what we call a loving adult. And we're a loving adult when we're open to learning about loving ourselves and we're connected with a higher source of love. Now, step 3 is going back inside. Let's say in step 1, you tuned in and you were feeling depressed, which of course a lot of people feel in the pandemic. Now, it's so easy to think, oh, I'm just depressed because of everything that's going on externally. But in step 3, we go inside and we ask, what am I doing? What am I telling myself? How am I treating myself? What am I not doing that's causing the depression? We're taking responsibility for it. And so let's say it is depression. Let's say I said, well, what am I telling you? How am I treating you? Well, that inner feeling, which we can call your inner child, your soul, your essence, might say to you, if it's even going to talk to you, because lots of times it won't, it doesn't trust you yet. But it might say, well, you're judging me, or you're putting a lot of pressure on me, or you're telling me I got to be perfect, or you're telling me I got to do everything right, or you're telling me that it's not okay to make a mistake, or I can't fail, or I'm never good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. Well, of course, if we're judging ourselves that way, we're going to feel anxious. We're going to feel depressed. And so it becomes so important to start to tune into how we treat ourselves, because we all have a programmed ego wounded part of ourselves. It's in the lower left brain that's got all these programs about what's wrong with us. And we treat ourselves basically the way that we were treated, or the way that our parents treated themselves. And so once we understand how we're treating ourselves and what we hope for, so we go a little deeper into that ego wounded part of ourselves, and we say, well, why are you telling this inner child that you got to be perfect and you got to do everything right? And that part might say, well, because if you're perfect and you do everything right, then you can have control over how people feel about you, and then you can get the approval you need, then you'll be okay. You see, because so many of us have learned to define our worth through other people's approval, and then we have to control it. So, this is very deep information that people can learn when they open to learning. And once they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, what they're trying to control or avoid or protect against, step 4, they open to their higher guidance. They're asking 2 questions. What is the truth about any of the false beliefs? And what is loving to me? And that's such an important question. What is loving to me? What is in my highest good right now? And with practice, people can learn to access that information. And once they get it, step 5 is to take the action, whatever it is you're being told to do. And it can be many different things. Maybe the loving action is stop smoking, stop drinking, start eating well, change jobs, go back to school, speak up for yourself with your partner, set limits with somebody. It could be so many thousands of things, but it's going to be about you. When you open to your guidance, it's going to be what you need to do to take care of yourself. And then, of course, you have to take the action, because without action doesn't mean anything. And once you take the loving action for yourself, you tune back in. How do you feel? And if indeed you've taken a loving action, you're going to feel so much relief that that level of depression or anxiety or whatever was there going to be so much less, because you're going to be being loving to yourself rather than abandoning yourself. So this is what I teach people. This is what I work with them with. And the people that I work with have come through this pandemic and are coming through it very well when they practice inner bonding.
Yeah, I'm certain that they are, because what you just explained are just major keys for a healthy life.
Right.
And something, Margaret, that we really notice, so much of our work is, with sacred geometry, we're working with a frequency, a vibrational energy, and in a way almost like antenna systems that support people in higher connection. And
Right.
without those higher connections, there is no self-love.
No.
And that's something that's so important for people to be focusing on, because those 2 things are so combined, and a real key to the healing on this whole planet. And here we are at a time where everyone all over the planet is going through a very similar experience. I mean, that's phenomenal. To me, that's like spirit going, whoa, this is a gift, you guys.
Right.
Such a huge gift. Let's see what you can do with it and how you can work together, because I think it's really about us all coming together to support that transformation, so that we really can come back and be loving to ourselves and to Mother Earth and to each other.
Right. Yes, I totally agree.
And it's so important, like you have been just sharing, that everyone is willing to put it into action.
Right.
That's so key because that's how you get feedback. That's how you learn. And it's important to be so kind to yourself during this whole process, because sometimes you're going to be 180 degrees off with your guidance, but that's learning. That tells you what direction to go in.
Right.
And so it sounds like you're taking people into their heart, to their higher self. What are some of the other aspects that you recommend to help people make that higher connection through their heart center?
Yeah. So, it's really about priority. Either a person's priority is coming from that ego wounded place of wanting to get. They want to get love. They want to get attention. They want to get money. They want to get control. They want to get power. I mean, look at our planet. That's why we're in trouble, because that left brain, that lower left brain, wounded part of us is determined to, have control over the environment, for example, or over what's natural on the planet. And that's what's messed things up. So when I work with people, I help them to shift their priority away from controlling and from getting, and recognize that we are here on this planet for a very good reason. Our soul came here to evolve in our ability to love and to manifest the gifts that we've been given. This is what I've been taught by my guidance when I was having a very hard time many years ago, before I really got into inner bonding. And why am I here? What's the point? And my guidance said, you are here. Your soul came here to evolve in your ability to love and to manifest the gifts you've been given. Well, I took that in. And so love, being loving, evolving in my ability to love has been my highest priority. Unfortunately, it's not the highest priority for many people. And so I try and help them to shift out of what they think is important, which is the control, and into what's truly important, which is the love. And once people shift their priority, they've shifted their intention, then they are willing to learn inner bonding. They're willing to practice. They're willing to take my courses. They're willing to read my books. They're really willing to learn this process. This process is magical. It came about because I had been practicing traditional psychotherapy for 17 years. I was not happy. I had had tons of my own therapy. I was not happy with the results. I started to pray. I asked for a process that would work fast and deep. And at that time, I met Dr. Erica Chopich. She's the co-creator of Inner Bonding. She had half the process. I had half, and our higher guidance just came in and put it together.
Good.
And so my prayer was answered. And I started to practice it because at that time, even though I'd had tons of therapy and being a therapist for that long, and even though I had eaten really well, because I started eating all organic 60 years ago, a long time ago, and because I was a sickly kid and I was tired of being sick, so I started eating all organic early in my 20s, and so I was eating really well. But in my mid 40s, I got really sick, and my immune system was shutting down. And doctors were warning me, but they didn't know what was wrong. Why was I getting so sick? And when inner bonding came in, I realized why. Because one day I let my inner child speak to me. And she said, you don't even know I'm here. You don't listen to me. You don't take care of me. I have so much to tell you, and you just ignore me. You're out there taking care of everybody else instead of taking care of me. How sick do I have to make you before you pay attention to me? Light bulb moment. I realized that's why I was so sick. And that is why many people get sick. I have so many clients that get cancer because they're completely ignoring themselves or completely giving themselves up. And that is where I was headed. And I know if I didn't start to practice inner bonding, I would have died. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind.
Mhm.
So it's so important for our individual health, our planetary health, and our connection with spirit that we learn to take care of ourselves. But it's a challenge because at that time I was in a long marriage. I had 3 kids and I was taking care of everybody. I was Mother Earth. I was a caretaker for my husband, for my kids, for my parents, for my clients. Of course, I was completely depleted because I was abandoning myself. Well, it's very scary. I was very scared to discover whether the people they said they love me, whether they did. Were they going to support me in learning to love myself, or were they going to be angry at me for not taking care of them? But I knew that I needed to take that risk. I made a couple of life-changing decisions at that point. And one was that I was willing to get hurt. Most people are not willing to get hurt. I became willing to get hurt. And the other was I was willing to lose everybody else, but I was no longer willing to lose me because I completely lost me. Very hard decisions to make, but they were life-changing. And everything that I was afraid of happened. My husband was very angry and I lost my 30-year marriage. 2 of my 3 kids were very angry and my parents disowned me. So everything that I was afraid of happened, but I got my health, my vitality, my creativity, my aliveness, joy for the first time in my entire life, my career soared. And I got to say that I live a very, very blessed life. I know very few people that live in as much joy as I do. So even though it was one of the hardest things that I ever did, I would do it again. But most people are not going to take that risk. And that's the problem, you see. So, yeah.
We help people take that risk. You know, it's so interesting when the vaccines came out and it looked like people were, you know, really going to stand in line and get the shots and get COVID behind us. It was so promising for a while. And then it just kind of stopped, you know, it kind of came to a kind of a slow, you know, a real major slowing down. And then the Delta variant and all these other things started to happen. And so here we are. And in some places, there's lockdowns again.
Right.
And it says to me, there's so much more for us to learn.
Mm.
And I love what you're saying because we do have to take those risks. We do have to be willing to let go of those things that we think we want and that we're very familiar with in order to jump into what real joy is.
That's right.
How during this time, what are the words of wisdom that you have for people during this time to take that risk, you know, to go forward so that we can really come through this in the way that I believe it's intended for us to go through?
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting about the vaccine because I'm not a big medical person. In fact, I've never gotten a flu vaccine. I keep myself very healthy. And I just didn't think flu vaccines were really great for the body, for the immune system. But when COVID came and the vaccine came out, I spent time with my higher guidance. You see, this is what people need to learn to do. Instead of coming from their fear, from their ego, oh, don't control me, don't tell me what to do, they get into their resistance. Oh, nobody's going to control me. I went to my higher guidance and I asked, what is in my highest good? And I got very clearly, take the vaccine. So I did, you see. So if people are tuned in, if they are willing to open to learning about truth and about love, then we're going to be able to move through this. But all these anti-vaxxers, they're not coming from love. They're coming from fear. And they're coming from a need to control. The anti-vaxxers, the anti-masks, it's all about, don't tell me what to do. You don't have control over my body. And I mean, that's getting us into a lot of trouble. And when we put, like I said, we put that ego wounded self, which is where they're coming from, they're angry, they can get violent. That's not what a loving adult does. A loving adult really looks at what is loving and what is in the highest good of all, because they don't care who they infect. I do. I care that, people are not going to get sick by being next to me. And that was part of why I chose to take the vaccine. I don't want to hurt anybody. But so what needs to happen is people need to shift their intention. They need to shift into making love their highest priority. Now, unfortunately, we don't have control over people's intention. I mean, if I could control people's intention, I would be happy to, but we can't do that. And so what I do when I work with people is I help them see the negative results on their health, their happiness, their relationships, their parenting, on operating out of the false beliefs of their ego wounded self, their need to control. And as they start to see the actual negative consequences of the choices they've been making, they shift their intention and they decide to become loving. I mean, it's very sad. You've seen these people in the hospitals who are dying of COVID because they didn't get the shot. And they say, get the shot, give me the shot. I wish I'd had the shot. Well, it's too late. They're dying. But they didn't listen to their higher guidance. They didn't open to learning. And that is just so vitally important now, that people open to learning about what's loving and what's true.
You talk so beautifully about this power. And what I'm referring to is like the way I interpret what you're sharing is how much we can be caught in the small part of ourselves, the ego part, that's wanting and controlling and all of this. And it's all about moving into our beingness.
Right.
And when we're in that space of beingness, I mean, which only comes through connection, and then allowing that love to come in, because that's all there really is in the higher aspects of our being.
Right.
Is that joy, is that love. And it's a state of allowing and being taken care of through our beingness. Be present and not have to go working at creating in the world, because the creation moves through you to have what needs to happen.
That's right.
And I was just going to say, I want you to share some more and share some of, I know you have a wonderful gift for a lot of the people listening. So weave that into what you were going to say right now too, please.
Yeah. So I'm going to read the title because I just changed it and I can't remember. It's called it's To Profound Self-Love and Joyous Connection. And it's a little ebook, and it would really, it'll really help people start to understand this process. It came through from my higher guidance. All my writing comes through from my guidance. And so it will be very, very helpful for people to begin this process.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I love the assistance and the focus that you have on helping people with that connection with higher guidance, because as you've been talking, it is the most natural thing in the world. It is who we are. So, in addition to reclaiming the child inside and all of the wonderful things that we're doing, we are reclaiming that aspect of our beingness that is so core to who we are. So, Margaret, for somebody that's not familiar with connecting with their higher self, with hearing that inner voice and respecting it, what do you tell them? How do you get them started?
Okay, well, first of all, I do describe the fact that it is about frequency. I find out about their diet, because if they're eating junk food, and sugar and processed food and all that, it's unlikely that they will raise their frequency high enough to be able to access their higher guidance. I mean, this is one of the things that has motivated me. I am so exact with what I put into my body, not only because I want health, but because I do not want anything to cut me off from my guidance. At this point, I cannot stand to not be in connection. It just feels horrible. So, I help them understand that it is about frequency, that spirit exists at a higher frequency than we do, which is why we can't see them. Most people can't. Some people can raise their frequency high enough to see them. I can raise mine high enough to hear them. But so frequency is both about our mind and our body. And so we raise the frequency of our mind when we move into an intention to learn about loving ourselves. That automatically raises our frequency. And then when we eat well, and we don't eat processed foods, which is anyway essential for healing the planet, we raise the frequency of our body. And so when people actually do that, and then I ask them, many people that I see, they've got no spiritual belief system. They don't believe in anything. And so I ask them to just visualize, imagine that they're in nature, and visualize an older, wiser part of themselves, like a part of themselves 300 or 400 years older. And imagine you're sitting at a picnic table with this older part of you, and you're asking, well, what would be loving to me right now? And I have them imagine that they've got this little kid, their inner child, like 2, 3 years old, playing, who's just adorable and wonderful. And I have them start to remember and describe who they were before they got injured and develop all their false beliefs. And invariably, they can see that their essence is love, and they're curious, and they're alive, and they're kind. And, they can start to see how beautiful they are in their souls. And that's motivating too. When you start to define your own worth instead of leave it up to everybody else, that's motivating to start to take care of yourself. So then I say, okay, now imagine that you're asking this older, wiser part of you, what would be loving to that beautiful little child? That's your inner child. That's inside of you. What would be loving? And then I say, just make it up. Because when people make it up, it's actually accurate. They don't realize it, but it's actually accurate. And so then I say, well, okay, how would it feel if you did that? Oh yeah, that would feel really good. Okay, well, that tells you it's loving. If it feels good, it's loving. If it feels bad, it's unloving. I mean, other than addictions, which feel good for the moment, but they don't feel good for long. And almost always, the first thing that people say about what would be loving to them is to give that child a hug. And I say, okay, put your hands on your heart and imagine you are holding that beautiful child in you and bringing the love from your higher self down inside into that child. And they immediately feel relief. And for many of them, it's the very first time they have ever accessed the love that is here for them. You can see them go, ah. And then of course I say, okay, you can ask that question with everything, every situation in your life. Start to ask, what is loving to me now? What is in my highest good and the highest good of all? Because whatever is truly loving to us and in our highest good is going to be in the highest good of all. And if they start to practice that, they're going to start to feel a whole lot better, and they're going to get that there's always guidance here for them, always.
And I want to step into something with you around this, because sometimes people think that that voice only comes now and again, as opposed to it's always available. It is you. It is an aspect of you that the more you develop it and play with it, it's like your creativity. The more that you prime the pump for your creativity, the more it's expressed
Right,
in multitudes of ways.
right.
So, Margaret, I believe, and I have a feeling that you would also agree with me on this, that as we are moving forward in this time, I mean, to some level, we're not in the same position of lockdown as we were a year ago. And so we are moving on to some degree. And we're not going back. We can't pick up those pieces. It's not even there anymore. It's disintegrated. And there's a new structure. There's a lot of new capability and new aspects of ourselves to come forward with.
Yeah,
And we can't control things. We can't, but what we can do is allow ourselves to move into this natural posture of that connection with the higher self, with the inner voice, with our guidance, with that wonderful aspect of brilliance. And so how do we get people to, what's the word? Come to make it a regular part of themselves, a predictable and regular part of themselves. It's always there.
Well, that's where I was 37 years ago before I understood how to connect. I mean, I knew it was there. It would come every once in a while, all by itself, but I wanted at will divine connection. That's what I call it, at will divine connection. And that's why I wrote that book that I wrote recently, which is about the one beyond junk foods and junk thoughts to at will divine connection. So Diet for Divine Connection teaches people how to do that. And that's what I've been talking about both the food and the intention. It's both of these things. People are not going to do that until they have an experience. And they're not going to have an experience of it until they're willing to practice it. So I didn't know that I was capable of at will divine connection until I started to practice inner bonding. And then I started to experience it more and more and more until I realized, oh, it's always here. I'm the one that went away. Guidance never went away. I went away. Mm-hmm. And so I had an experience. You can't convince people of it, but what they might be willing to do is to practice doing what they need to do to keep their frequency high, and then they'll get the experience of it. And of course, indigenous people always had this experience. They knew about spirit, and they knew, and they do now still around the world. It's natural for them. They're mostly still eating well, and they're staying open to higher guidance. And so they have that experience all the time. But people in the Western world have lost that. And it's so sad that they've lost that ability. They don't know what they're missing. Honest to God, they just don't know what they're missing in not having that connection all the time. And so what I do is I just share my experience with people about how amazing it is to have that connection. One of the things that's happened for me over the time of practicing inner bonding is that the person I was most connected to in life was my paternal grandfather. And I was born on a farm in New York, and he used to come and visit me every day. And he was the one I could connect to because my parents were not connectable. But my parents left the farm when I was 13 months old. I never saw him again. And I actually almost died from the loss of him. And when I was 10, we went back to visit the farm, and I remembered him. I said, that's where my grandfather used to walk down the road to come and put me on his lap and sit with me. And since then, it's evolved that I have developed this connection with him. And now it's just so beautiful. It is nonstop, along with my other guidance, because we all have a lot of guidance. My connection with him is nonstop. And it's just amazing. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's, it's what people can learn to experience when they learn to access their higher guidance. So a lot of people I work with get motivated because I role model it for them, and they see that it's possible. And also the other thing that I often do is I let people know my age. I'm 82 years old, and I'm full of health and vibrancy and creativity, and and I say it's what you put in your body, it's daily exercise, and it's inner bonding. It's your state of mind and being able to connect to your guidance, and that creates health. And so they see it and they get motivated.
That's wonderful. So simple, isn't it?
That joy that comes in, the higher emotions, I always see them as gifts. Love is from higher self. Joy is from higher self.
Right.
And it's all the negative emotions are what come from the body, and they are all driven by fear, ultimately. And that fear blocks the higher flow. Just like so much of the technology in our world right now, the computers, the toxins, they're blocking that flow of energy because of, as you say, and I totally agree, it lowers our frequency. In some cases, it literally puts us behind a closed door.
Yeah.
So working, I know, with diet is important, meditation, what we've been working with sacred geometry is to work with the aspects of creation that are there in the way everything is formed, and to bring those elements into our lives so that we have some vibrations to raise us to start building on. And then, as with everything else, these are tools that just need work. That means you need your intention. You need to say, where am I going to go with this vibration to create? And some of the best stuff is for the good of all.
Right.
Because, we're served ourselves really when we serve others.
That's
and the universe wants to flow through us, and there's so much help. When you talk about guidance, everything is looking for an opportunity to be of service. And for any human being that recognizes that there is support and opens themselves and allows themselves, they are giving so much opportunity for these beings of love to come through, because they want to be of service. They are part of our evolution. We are all one in that sense of evolving together. And to give each other that opportunity, it comes through the heart first. It's like this one friend from Peru was sharing, an Incan saying is, me today, you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what it really is you take care of your inner child, you service your health and your well-being, and then you have the ability to be a conduit for that love, that infinite divine love, to then everybody else is taken care of. You don't have to do the work anymore because you're just the conduit, and it doesn't deplete you. And it's so beautiful to watch you.
Yeah, and what you said is so important. It's not depleting at all. When you're bringing it through from guidance and sending it out as love, there is no sense of depletion. The analogy that I give people with this is like, if you're operating out of your ego, fear, woundedness, you're like a flashlight with batteries running down. But if you're operating in connection with your higher guidance, it's like you're plugged into an infinite source of electricity, and it never runs down. And it just keeps filling you with love, with peace, with joy, with energy, with health, with vibrancy, and the ability to manifest. And I tell people, we don't manufacture love in our body. We don't manufacture joy. We don't manufacture compassion. Like you said, they are gifts of spirit. And they enter us when our heart is open. And people say to me, well, how do I get my heart open? And I say, well, it's natural when your intention is to learn about loving yourself and sharing your love with others. The heart naturally opens. But when your intention is to control, to protect, to avoid pain, your heart closes, your whole being closes, and spirit can't come in the closed door. It doesn't mean spirit is not here. It is, it's always here. But you've closed the door. And that love, that is the most wonderful thing in the world. And the peace and the joy and the truth and the compassion has no way to come in. And so until people actually recognize that, what I say is that the essence of free will is our ability to choose our intention at every given moment, moment by moment. We get to decide who we want to be. Do we want to be closed and controlling and greedy and just seek power over others? Or do we want to be loving? Do we want to learn how to truly love ourselves and share our love? Do we want to manifest the gifts we've been given? Do we want to live in peace and joy? We get to choose that moment by moment.
Beautiful.
Oh, such a wonderful place to conclude for everyone, because it's everyone who's listening. This is their choice. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has really been lovely, Margaret. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
And I really feel like there's cause for much hope. I've seen during this time, and I think you could corroborate this, that there are so many people who are opening up more, gravitating to this work more, who have taken this reflective time to
Right.
look at themselves, and we've been talking to people who are like big thought leaders and people from all different walks of life. And all these people have gone through something that has enabled them to look more honestly at themselves, not in a way of a negative way of looking at it, but what can I do to open the space more, to open my spirit, my heart more? And so I have a lot of hope
Yeah,
that
me too.
people have been doing a lot, and that spirit has something very precious in mind for us. And
So do.
do you feel that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been a delight to be sharing with you. And blessings and love.
Thank you.
Blessings, Joel.
Thank you for watching and being a part of the Divine Paradigm co-creation. The time has come for us to work together in co-creative ways, with the outcome being greater than any of us could have achieved alone. You make a difference in this important time, so thank you so much. We want to let you know tomorrow there will be another amazing conversation with one of the heartfelt thought leaders who have chosen to be a part of this symposium. Each program is available for 48 hours, and all of them can be replayed on Sundays. You will be receiving an email in your inbox that will take you to the next conversation. So make sure you're getting our emails. Please stay with us and stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of fun with some powerful messages. The full program takes place 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday for 3 weeks. And the full program will also be available at the end for purchase. Keep checking back to the page to enjoy our next conversation. Blessings and love.